All right.
Hi everyone, you're all very welcome to our Happy Holidays Hangout on Air for Google Shopping. So the Hangout today will take about 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and we have time for questions as well. So just a quick intro first of all, my name is Paul Brett. I'm a Google Shopping Specialist here within our UK retail team. And
my name is Oz Olsen. I'm also a Google Shopping Specialist for a team called Performance X here with Google.
So to get started, so what are we going to talk about?
Today we're going to talk about something that I absolutely adore doing, which is putting together a shopping wish list. Our shopping wish list today is going to contain information about how to prepare for the holiday season, what to do during the holiday season, especially around feeds and campaigns. So it all has to do with shopping. Right. So let's get started on the holiday prep. What I like to do when I start looking into preparing for the holiday season around shopping is by focusing on the seasonal calendar. And when I talk to my clients around seasonal calendars, the three areas I talk about most is what I call KPIs, promotions, and a technical aspect. When it comes to KPIs, I really talk about what kind of budgets we can expect for a holiday season. So whatever information or numbers you're comfortable sharing here, that's perfectly fine with us, and make sure that we sort of understand when certain budgets will kick in or who is monitoring the budgets.
Yeah, I think from our point of view, it's just incredibly useful for us to know exactly what's going on in the business, because obviously we have our way of looking at Google Shopping, say for example, but sometimes a client looks at the reporting in different brands slightly differently than we'd expect. So the more you can share, the better.
Exactly. And then obviously, if there's a specific KPI that you're looking on or you intend to focus on during the holiday season, let's talk about that as well. Also, when I talk about a promotional calendar, what I really focus on is understanding whether you will be present online during Black Friday or any of the other seasonal events that are going to happen between now and the end of the year. Also, I really want to understand if you are focusing on Christmas holiday sales or any what we call post-Black Friday sales. And finally, just to round it off, when it comes to technical, I like to talk about what will happen if there is a crisis. So basically establishing a crisis response plan. So understanding who will do what if a crisis happens and who will actually take action. And also, a very important thing that I know, Paul, you and I have experienced happens a lot during holiday season is to understand when the technical deadlines are. So essentially, we call it a code freeze, when we can't make any changes to the website or even the feed, because that helps us really plan out our seasonal calendar in a much better and much clearer way.
And I think it's also important for us to share kind of like almost like our crisis plan as well, or like just simple points of context when, if I'm not in the office, are you going to be there to share that with you? So just, talk to us in advance, give us an idea of not only your season calendar, but when key people may be in or out of the office, and we'll do the same with you. So it just means that we don't run into that kind of like that crisis or panic situation where I suppose the people who are used to dealing with maybe the feed are not present, or same with the campaigns.
Right. So next, we're going to focus a little bit on what to prepare for a holiday when it comes to feeds. I think, Paul, you're going to talk us through this.
Okay, so first of all, let's look at the feed specifications. So everything we're talking about today is to try and prepare yourself so that when you get to peak, things just run smoothly. So first thing I'd like to discuss is the recent requirement around image sizes. So earlier this year, we announced feed specification changes, I think around May, June time, and came into enforce just this week, 1st of September. So really what we're looking for is just good quality data overall, so good quality information. So in this case, we've increased our minimum requirements for images. We also have some requirements around apparel items, so that just came into effect. So that's around color and sizes. So if you have, if you sell any shirts, t-shirts, or anything that's categorized under apparel, essentially what we're looking to do is just get the best quality data possible and make sure that you populate those particular attributes within the feed. So that's the color and size information. Now you may have that within the business, but just haven't submitted within the feed before.
Yeah.
So it's just something to pay attention to, and do that, I suppose, for all markets. You know, we have identified some markets here that we're saying that we require for, but if you're operating in a market that's not identified here, do just submit the best quality data you have.
One part of submitting a really high quality data is to use something that we call a GTIN. Just to clarify, a GTIN stands for a Global Trade Item Number. So essentially what that means is that a GTIN is the same in whatever country you are. You can see a large number of countries here that are listed, and I'm going to not read them to save time. However, we're going to actually enforce GTINs in all countries on a fairly memorable date, which is February 14, 2017. I'm not saying that it's the most romantic Valentine's Day gift, but at least it's an easy date to remember. So closer to the date or the deadline, you're going to start seeing some warnings in your merchant center, but please don't wait until then to add GTINs. If you have the data already, just start adding it already and be ahead of the curve.
And I think that's the important thing. Again, you know, the more information you have, the better quality your feed's going to be, the more we can trigger ads. Like the other thing is, like, obviously you need to have this for the deadline, otherwise your ads won't show. But just in advance, like, our system works better when we have this information. So you know, your ads are going to perform better. You're going to get cheaper CPCs the more data you have. So do submit those GTINs.
Indeed. Now, Paul, when it comes to some data quality, what are some of the other areas that you should focus on in preparing for peak season?
Okay, so some of the key areas I'd like to focus on really are around price and availability mismatches, making sure you don't have any crawler issues, and taking a look at any shipping or tax information that might be missing. So I suppose these are the kind of things you can do right now before you get into peak season, because often these are kind of challenging things to fix if you're under time pressure. So the first is price and availability mismatches. So this is probably most common we see across retailers, particularly when you get into peak season, because you're going to have situations where your price and your availability change quite frequently, purely because it's such a busy period. So the key thing to here is just to remember to keep all this information up to date. So if your prices or availability is changing on your landing page, make sure that it changes in the information you send us. And I'll cover a little bit more detail on that later on. So the next is around crawler issues. So like I said, you know, we may see instances where we see different price in the landing page versus the feed. So what Google does is it basically quality checks the information we receive. And it quality checks everything. It's checking images, titles, descriptions, prices, availability. So in order to do that, we have to be able to see the landing page. So our system kind of crawls it, looks for different pieces of information. And if our crawler can access the landing page, essentially it can't quality approve that the data we receive, and you could end up with your products getting disapproved. So it's really important to make sure that you, I suppose, share the message with your IT team. Make them aware that, you know, if you make any restrictions to Google crawler, potentially the shopping ads will get disapproved, and then, you know, you'll cause difficulties. So it's really just an important one to share, because often, I suppose, the people we talk to, like marketing managers, PPC managers, this is quite a technical thing, and it's not something they cover day to day. So I just make sure everyone in the business is aware of this.
Yep. So if you're going to make any changes to the website, make sure you discuss what kind of impact that would have on the crawler, be that the crawler, how often we can crawl, and so forth. So it's an important discussion to have, which is why we spent quite a little bit of time on it.
So the next point is, I suppose it's not that a technical issue, but it's just something that we see retailers kind of struggle with, particularly when they're launching in new markets. So this is missing tax or shipping information. I think the reason behind this is it's simply like it's a new market. You're not familiar with the kind of taxes and things like that. So all this information is available on the help center externally. So just check that out. If you are planning a launch in a new market, just review that information. And again, talk to your account manager, and they should be able to point you in the right direction.
Right. So when it comes to understanding or making sure that you are aware if there is an issue with the data quality or any other technical issue, one of the recommendations that we always do, and we do it as early as possible, is to update what we call your contact information. So as you can see here, you can update this in your Merchant Center, and we always recommend to make sure that you have what we call an email alias. So basically an email list that includes everyone who can and should take action if there is an issue. Because often what we have seen is that sometimes people don't get the necessary information they need, and then an issue continues to affect an account, and that's not a good thing during peak season. So make sure that you have what's called an email alias, and make sure that everyone who needs to be included is included.
So that's like, again, include your IT team, your web developer, your marketing team, and potentially if you have a feed provider as well, because obviously this is particularly important for them to be aware of.
Perfect. So now we're starting to prepare for seasonality events. What are some of the things that you can do to focus on understanding how you can stand out a little bit during the holiday season?
Okay, Åsa. So the two things I'd like to discuss are merchant promotions and the use of the sale price attribute. So first of all, the merchant promotion is, I suppose, an option on Google Shopping for you to highlight or display like any discounts or percentage off any sales that you're doing. Now we do have some policy requirements around that, but it does allow you to kind of just stand out from the crowd, bring that message that you have a sale on, or there is a kind of some sort of an offer percentage off to the public. So I suppose the important things about this is that it does take a little bit of time to set up. There's kind of two-stage review process. So, think about it in advance. If you haven't run them before, do some tests now. If you have any promotions going in September or even October, do it on. You can run these at kind of a product level. So what I'm saying is just get familiar with it, because I have seen instances in the past where, like, say on a Friday afternoon, retailer comes to me, they're going to do a promotion that weekend, and it's just a little bit too late, unfortunately, to try and get live in that short period of time. So do plan it out, share your kind of your promotion calendar with your account manager, test it in advance. And again, if it's in some cases, you may still need to be whitelisted to use this product. So do talk to your account manager, make sure you're whitelisted. The second point I'd like to make is in relation to the sales price attribute. And this is essentially, this is a case where you have, say, if you have a sale next week, and the prices are all going to change on Tuesday. So you just basically tell us this in advance. So you submit this information within your feed, you give us the date, you give us the new prices of the product, and essentially it means that on that date at that specific time, we're going to update the prices in your Google Shopping ads. And again, it kind of reduces the chances of any discrepancies between, say, the website and the price that we have in the feed. And it just makes your life easier. You do all these things in advance. You don't kind of run into difficulty. There's no surprises. You're not learning how to set these things up. So again, this is something you could do now. You could do it on a handful of products. Just be familiar with the process.
One of the things that is super important when it comes to a feed is to always have as fresh a data as possible. So I think, Paul, you're going to talk us through a little bit what you can do to make sure that that is the case.
Sure. So there are a couple of things you can do, and one is the use of product inventory update feeds. And essentially what this is a small version of the feed that you normally send to Google. It just has the kind of, I suppose, the things that change most frequency, like the price and the availability. And you send us the item ID of the product, just the price, availability, and then it means that it's a much smaller amount of data that we're receiving. It means our system can process it much faster. If you send that to us multiple times during the day, it means there's less chance of any discrepancy between the data we have and your website. So again, it's a fairly simple process, but it just, I suppose, just means that you don't get into those instances where even if it's a temporary disapproval of a product, you just don't want that during the holiday season.
No. Again, I recommend to actually test this already, just to make sure that you are familiar with the process. So when it comes to what we call the crunch time, it's not really a big issue to update and send in these feeds.
And the next point I'd like to make is in relation to automatic item updates. So this is another feature within the Merchant Center which addresses this kind of discrepancy in price availability. And I find it particularly useful. So how it works is if we notice a discrepancy between price on site and the feed, rather than disapproving your product, we'll just say, this system basically tells Google to go, okay, ignore my feed, just take the price that you see on my website. So it just makes it life much easier for you. You don't run into those situations where you have a significant amount of disapprovals for price. So how it works, essentially what you do is you put a piece of code called microdata or schema on the actual website. That allows our system to basically go and pick off the price you want us to use. And then the second piece, I suppose, of the puzzle is to switch on the automatic item updates feature within the Google Merchant Center itself. And that has multiple options. It allows you to just update price or update availability. But it's really, really useful. And I think it's something that we see the most benefit at peak times when you're seeing huge amounts of changes in availability and price. And the other benefit of this is that we're looking to, I suppose, add additional features to it as well. I'll just run through that now. So I suppose the question you might ask yourself, like, you know, it's the start of September now, which of these features is best for me? And essentially, I suppose that's down to you as a retailer. Sometimes that, you know, we find that technically you can only do one or the other. Some of the reasons behind that would be if you're looking at the online feed, you may not have the ability to actually extract updated prices multiple times during the day. Right. So if that's the case, you would essentially be sending us the same price that's incorrect all the time. So there's no real benefit or from going down that approach. On the other side, automatic item updates, like I said, it's going to have a lot more features built into it in the future. Our product managers are very keen on developing this. And what I would say is that it does get around that situation where you have to have another system in place where you're uploading another feed. It's kind of like once you get it set up, you don't really need to worry about it too much. Like obviously we have to, you know, request you to send the most accurate data to us in the first place. Yeah. But then when you layer this on top of it, I think your concerns go away, and then you can focus on, like that, your campaigns and the more important things at peak time. So.
Exactly. So this is an additional layer that you can add to make sure that you don't have any feed issues during peak season. They will, however, never replace an accurate and fresh data feed that you should always maintain and send in to us as often as you have specified in your Merchant Center.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing. It's more like a backup than a replacement.
Yes.
So that's an important message.
Right. So how do you prepare your shopping campaigns for peak season? One of the things that I like to do is to focus on talking about how to subdivide a campaign. When you subdivide a campaign or structure a campaign, is another way of saying it, I always talk to my advertiser and I always ask them the following questions. Do you have different product lines? I would say the majority of advertisers say yes. If you have a different department, if you have separate budgets, and so forth. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is if you have a reasonable reason to subdivide a campaign or structure it in a certain way, then do so. When it comes to peak season, I always ask if you have a specific amount of products or specific products that drive the majority of your revenue. If so, do you know who they are? And if you apparently hopefully have some seasonal products that you're pushing, then try to actually focus on those as well. So identify who your top performing items are. And if you have them same performing item or top performing items from last year, please use the item ID report in the dimensions tab, because that can easily help you identify which items these are.
Yeah, I think that's something certainly I find incredibly useful. I think it's a report, again, that a lot of people maybe not that familiar with, because it does give I suppose what I find is retailers are used to looking at their existing campaign structure and how it's broken down, be it by brand or product type. But when you skip past the kind of layers of the campaign structure, when you go to the dimensions tab, you're looking at the products themselves. So sometimes I think that's a better approach than just kind of focusing on whatever existing structure is in place. So it does give you great insights because it can be hard to see within the kind of, I suppose, the regular front end.
And then what we obviously say is to create a dedicated campaign for around the season. So make sure that you have complete insights into what's going on with your top performing products, because they are meant to drive the majority of the revenue during this season. One way that we can do that and make sure that you actually have very good insights is what we call a campaign must-have. It's Google has recently moved some of the data that you usually find in the Merchant Center. We've actually moved it into the AdWords account, so you can get those insights without having to look at two different sources. So here you can see in the example, you can actually see what's called a product status, and this is actually on item ID level. And then you can see what's the average CPC for it, and also what the effective max CPC. So essentially the CPC that you have going into the auction. You can do that by actually opting in these columns if you are on an ad group level on the products tab, which is another reason why we say have a specific campaign for your top performing products, so you really can get the most granular insights possible. Right. And another thing that we also really say is a campaign must-have is to make sure that you have what we call a catch-all campaign. So you really make sure that you're not losing any opportunity and that all your items have a bid attached to it. Generally, we would say that these campaigns should have a low priority, and you should be targeting all products in here. One of the reasons why we say have these catch-all campaigns is also if you have new items coming in continuously. During the holiday season, there's a lot of things taking up your time. So sometimes you might forget to put the new items in the actual designated campaigns. Then this campaign would act as a catch-all and make sure that you have all your inventory covered at all times.
And that's something we do see sometimes. Like you might find, like if you're looking at the feed itself, you have lots of products. You have everything that's on your website. And then when you look at the kind of campaign structure, you're all of a sudden over time you may be missing these key products. So I think that's a really important point. And it's also worth kind of delving into the all products every so often, because sometimes, because it's a low priority and it's kind of catch all, essentially all your traffic should be going through maybe the other campaigns. But again, it's important to review that all products in case there are products in there that you haven't targeted. You might need to break them out a little further. I think some of the other benefits would be if you run into any difficulties with the, I suppose, your more regular campaigns. You know, if someone accidentally switches it off, you know, maybe someone's a little bit tired someday and they pause it, you know, during the peak season if they're making some updates. Or sometimes simply just running out of budget. You might have a top sellers campaign that you think that you're doing well to have it set up for the weekend, and then all of a sudden, you know, you walk out on a Friday, your budget's gone through Saturday morning, but at least you have an all products there to kind of capture that traffic.
Right. So another obviously important area during the holiday and preparing for holiday is to make sure that you have the most competitive bidding possible. So some of the ways that we in Google like to advise is to use what we call eCPC, which is a Google automated bidding solution, which basically gives you an opportunity to take advantage of query level data, which is really important, and gives you an additional boost the more purchase intent the query has. So essentially, the more specific your query gets. I'm going to show you an example of that just a little bit further down. And one other really good thing about eCPC, it's very easy to actually opt in. You can just change one of the settings here, or basically opt in by ticking a box in your settings. And as you can see, the option or the aim for this is to get the more conversions for about the same cost, and then give an additional query level data boost for all your bidding. And this is the example. So essentially what happens here is you can see the queries get more and more specific, and then Google boosts or the ECPC actually boosts a little bit extra to make sure that you are visible if you have these particular or any items that matches these queries. So this is a fairly good example of that.
So basically what we're looking at, so the first column here, the no bid adjustment. So if you didn't have any, if you just manual bidding, you just have a 60-cent bid across or 60 pence bid across everything, regardless of the query. And then with ECPC, you're going to see the more refined that gets, we're going to see those bids go up and down potentially.
Exactly, exactly.
And then of course you have your lovely jumper, which also spent a long time picking out as well.
Yes, I think it wraps everything up quite neatly. Right, so Paul, could you walk me through some of the opportunities we have to actually capture the wonderful additional traffic that we're going to see?
So yeah, I think the other thing to consider when you're going into the kind of peak season is that you have everything set up so you're capturing all this information. You're potentially you're going to get a lot more users to your site, and what you want to do is capture that information and make use of it. So remarketing is an option for you in order to do this, and it's been around for a while on search and display. It's relatively new to shopping, and essentially what it allows you to do is basically say, okay, this user has been to my website, or they've been to my product or category page, or they purchased from me before. I see these people as a lot, they're very valuable, particularly those who get further and further down the funnel. And what you want to do then is, if they go back onto Google and they start searching for a particular product, you can essentially start bidding up for those people. So important point to consider when you're going into the holiday season, and this is something you should start doing now, is to start building lists and setting them up to capture all this information correctly. So by default, AdWords sets the cookie duration as 30 days. So it'll capture users for 30 days, and beyond that, then they start to fall off. So if you start to think like from now on, we're going to start to see a ramp up in queries, the kind of holiday season is getting longer. So it's really important to kind of look at those lists. You may use 30 days, you may even use 7 days or 3-day lists, but do try and capture the kind of longer duration lists because, the searches from October may not be, you may not have those users on your list by the time it gets to the real peak season, depending on when yours is. But usually, we do see it in retail, certainly around Black Friday. And then again, think about the new year and into the kind of the holiday sales in January. So just really important to review the lists, add longer durations to them, and then layer those on your existing campaigns. So
Paul's going to show you an example of what that kind of list segmentation can look like.
Yeah. So this is, I suppose, this is a kind of if you're looking for a template or broad overview on how to do this, you look at layering the lists across the different pages the further you go down the funnel. So you start with your homepage viewers, then your category page, and your cart abandoners and your past converters. So like all the time, really, you're getting more and more refined set of users, and you're willing to, I suppose, pay more against your competition to bid up for those users. So it's just it's really important to start kind of planning that now. Think about your products. You may start to use it to cross sell. So you may find there'd be certain products that certainly somebody's going to go buy one of, but yet they might be a family, they may be buying more toys. So start cross selling maybe a bestseller list for across other ad groups. So just think about that now. It does take a little bit of time, build the lists, and then you'll be set up to run smoothly when it gets to peak.
Right, so it's crunch time.
It is.
We now arrived at the holiday season. Sounds wonderful. So what are some of the things that we can think about during the holiday season, now that we prepared quite clearly for it? Again, we're going to focus on 3 things. We're going to focus again on Merchant Center and fees because it is quite an important thing, and obviously bids and budgets. And then we're going to add an additional one, how to capture for those clients who actually have an offline presence, how local inventory ads can help you capture that last minute traffic.
So I think Merchant Center is myself. So really what we've kind of described so far is how you prepare. You've cleared out everything, you've managed your data, you've updated all the feed specs, you have automatic item updates set up or online inventory feeds, and you're not concerned about your data management. So it's just really important then at this stage just to regularly check in with your merchant center, just to make sure that there's not any significant increase in item levels disapprovals. You may see, so fingers crossed, all the work you've done, there's certainly going to be no surprises.
Yep.
But you may find instances, if you didn't get everything set up in time, that you do see a slight rise in disapprovals. So I'd say you should be checking the merchant center every day anyway. Don't wait for a warning to come to you. So there's, I suppose, the important point, the good news, I suppose, this year is that we're not in a situation where previously we may have suspended an entire feed somewhat frequently if we noticed a lot of errors in it. What we've tried to do is make life easier on you and move away from that kind of entire feed suspension down to an item level disapproval. So we've also introduced what's called a preemptive item disapproval. So this is kind of like a warning. We've noticed there's some errors in your feed. Here's some examples. Please go ahead and fix them. If you don't, we'll start to basically disapprove more and more products over time. So we're just trying to make life easier. We've heard your feedback. It can be challenging to try and maintain all this data. And to be honest, it's been great over the past year, seeing the changes internally, trying to make life easy, and also seeing the effort that retailers have put in to try and make sure that they keep good quality data.
Yeah. And then one thing that we recently launched to make feed management slightly easier is what we call feed rules. Paul, can you walk me through a little bit?
Yeah. So imagine a situation you're in peak and you notice there's a certain set of products that are suddenly taken off, the big hit this Christmas. So you may find that you want to kind of isolate those in their own campaign and use custom labels. Now, imagine a scenario your feed provider maybe is on holidays or a day off, or your IT team is just overloaded with other work. So this basically allows you to take more control as a kind of, from a marketing point of view. Just that within your team, you can look at making changes to the feed, some simple changes. And one of those is certainly custom labels. It means that you could target certain products and then build campaigns on the back of them. You can do other things like update shipping labels and some forms of optimization. So imagine a situation where you, maybe like we talked about the attributes earlier, you have new products and you're missing color or size within the attributes column, but yet you have that information within the title. You can set up feed rules to take that information from the title and place it within the relevant attribute within the feed. So it's just something to try and make your life easier. You have more control. Doesn't require you depending on going through other teams. And fingers crossed, it'll just make your life that little bit easier this peak.
Exactly. And then again, once you get to peak season, bids and budgets are always super relevant. And some of the recommendations that I have during this time would be to make sure that obviously you bid competitively. The reason why I bring it up is that quite often, and I saw this quite often last year, is that you look at last year's bids and what you bid then and set whatever bids you're going to actually use this year. However, when it comes to bidding, it's a very quick moving market, and people do bid differently and they bid fast and they make changes very often. So make sure that you actually monitor what is going on with your bids and make sure that you, especially on your top products, are as competitive as you can. And as you see here, the increase in conversion rate, it was up to 60% increase in the US in 2015. They do happen during peak season. So we really want to make sure that you actually take advantage and are on top of the auctions for your top products there. And what's really important is to also review the bids regularly on all your devices. Because as you can imagine, especially for your top products, when it comes to mobile, it's a smaller screen and you have fewer ads that are visible, and you want to make sure your top product is always going to be visible and be the one that sells the most.
I think one point on that as well is that if you think about, during the season itself, you're going to have people, I suppose people are always at different stages. There's the early stage where people maybe browsing a desktop or tablet or they browse on their mobile, but the behavior certainly changes throughout week to week because sales people are free. They're not, some people get more and more holidays around around that kind of period, So the kind of device behavior can change as well. So that's why it's really important to, check in regularly. Don't just assume, oh, I do very well on desktop. I do, good on mobile at this period. Just really start to look at it like a day-to-day basis to see how you're doing. Because I suppose historically, we see that like a lot of retailers look at this information kind of a wash up a couple of weeks later, maybe a week later. And that may be fine to look at how your week went. But I think it's your responsibility to get in there every day and start reviewing the performance per device.
Absolutely. Right. So then for the advertisers that have an offline presence, we want to talk a little bit about local inventory ads.
So this is, I suppose, for those clients who have stores, and really a huge advantage of this at peak time is the fact that you can drive a lot of traffic to store at the stage when a lot of maybe
shipping
deadlines have passed, essentially.
Yeah.
So it's too late to really order, but yet, like me or like many of us probably, you're kind of, you didn't, I'm talking about holidays here in September, but there's a good chance that we'll get to December, late December, and I will be racing around town to try and purchase some Christmas presents. So the important thing is with local inventory ads is that it kind of shows you that local store information. It shows you the availability. So it's really, really useful at this time of year. So if you're signed up, definitely take full advantage of this because obviously it's mobile first as well, and that's going to be key for the holiday peak season.
Perfect. So we're going to take a little bit of an opportunity to give you a summary of what we've talked about and when we think it's actually suitable to start focusing on some of the things that we have mentioned as far as go for a timeline. So in September, I would actually right now start having some discussions with your Google point of contacts or even internally in the company to understand what the holiday KPIs are and what kind of budgets you are intending to release for this peak season. And if you have a specific promotional calendar, then feel free to share it or then have a discussion about what the seasonal promotional calendar should be. And again, we talked about those technical deadlines. Make sure that you know when they are. So there is an actual cutoff date when we can't make any more changes and that everything is up and running properly until then. And then if you want to implement automatic item updates or any of the other feed options, then try and do so as early as possible. Like we said, do some testing, try it out, and then do that now. And if you want to create the top products and catch-all campaigns, you can do that already and start focusing on them and make sure that you capture all the traffic that is actually starting to increase already. And then make sure once you get to crunch time in November and December, then you're really ready.
And just one point actually there, I just thought of, if you think about what some retailers are doing now is, those who are very organized, they're thinking about even like beyond the peaks, like if there's potentially weather changes, if you're all of a sudden going to get snow and you sell, snow shovels or like anything to do that's suddenly seasonal or, build some of those campaigns now, have them set up so that you're ready for them at peak times.
Yep, or any surprise weather. When it comes to October, again, make sure that you, obviously, apart from the deadlines we've already mentioned, that all the feed specs are up to date. And again, review your technical context. Make sure you're not missing out on anyone. Set up your merchant promotions and test them out, as well as the sales attributes. It's a really good way to make sure that everything runs smoothly in November, December. And again, to capture as much as your traffic, potentially create 90 days up to 180 days RLSA lists.
So now we're in November, December. It's the moment we've all been waiting for, where there's a lot of work that's gone into the previous couple of months. You've got everything set up. You've thought through your campaigns. You've shared your calendars. You put all the technical infrastructure in place. Now, basically, you just want to keep everything running smoothly and take advantage of every opportunity. And by having all the kind of groundwork done, it means that if suddenly there's an opportunity, you'll have the time to focus on it rather than kind of in panic mode where you're always trying to fix something that's gone wrong. So the key things now at this stage are like activate eCPC, make sure that like, you know, the bidding kind of works for you, that you don't, you know, minimum amount of work from your point of view. Just keep an eye on your suspension warnings and your item level suspensions. Make sure that there's no sudden issues within your feed. If you see the opportunities, you know, to maybe do some small optimization or create custom labels for your kind of custom campaigns, use feed rules. And then I suppose it's just back to normal. Keep an eye on your budgets. Make sure that you're not capping out at weekends, at peak times, and then just keep bidding competitively. You know, monitor the device performance, monitor on a daily basis,
yep.
And just stay on top of your campaign budgets. And like at that stage, you know, if you've done all this, you should be in a great place for peak. And then when it gets to the holidays, the few days that you get off between that and when it starts again in January, you just should be able to relax and I think enjoy the season.
Certainly. Right. So that was it for us today. So all that remains is for us to wish you a very happy holiday.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.